This video is going to be yet another film study look at Sam Laporta, who turned in one of the most impressive seasons for a rookie tight end, to my knowledge, and in NFL history, it turns out, after doing a little bit of research. It makes me feel a little bit less guilty for having done so many film study videos of him in 2023. I do want to point your attention or perhaps interest towards one that I completed after week 2, before he had scored an NFL touchdown in the regular season, that is. Go back and look at some of my thoughts and see what I projected after only watching him play against the Chiefs and then the Seahawks in weeks 1 and 2. I did 4 in the regular season, 1 in the postseason, right before the NFC Championship game against the 49ers. Obviously, he was dealing with an injury. I don't think he practiced that week. The week 1 film against the Chiefs, his regular season opener, was an eye-opener for me. It showed not just his ability to line up as a tight end in the slot or to the boundary and be effective. I think he had like 5 catches for 39 yards, no touchdowns that night. Thursday Night Football opener, obviously. But he also lined up at wide receiver that evening, and he beat Trent McDuffie on a physical collision type play. He didn't win a third down earlier on against a corner on the other side of the field. He also had 3 different blocks that illustrated how balanced he was in terms of the run game. And it was kind of shocking to sit back and look at the impact or the way he was utilized, the diversity of how he was utilized. I had no idea that he was going to be that complete in week 1, that talented as a receiving threat during the course of the season. First of all, did I think he was going to be a good player? Yes, of course. I mean, you saw the highlights. They're really impressive. You could see the ability to catch point vertically at Iowa. That, obviously didn't have a great offense there, super efficient, but the toughness at the catch point, some down the field plays clearly. When the Lions drafted him in round 2, early in round 2, pick 34, they got it right, obviously. The talent and the rating was there. Still, week 1 was an eye-opener for me with the diversity of the way he was utilized. I pretty much knew I was going to do a film study video of him after that game, but it was so quick before the Sunday night or Sunday afternoon week 1 games. Had to wait till after week 2. He played extremely well against the Seahawks in that week 2 loss, and then all he does is rack up 86 catches in a variety of ways throughout the season. I think he was a solid and occasionally really tough blocker in Ben Johnson's scheme that I think is demanding for tight ends. And then returns from injury late in the season, week 18 injury, knee injury at that, against the Vikings, returns to put up 21 catches on 29 targets in the playoffs. It's a 77% catch percentage, 176 yards overall, and the 1 touchdown against the Rams. Thought it was a brilliant rookie season. I'm not sure why some people would say he can't match that or even exceed it. The talent is there. Let's get the film started here by looking at third down completions from 2023, third down conversions, that is. And I'm going to break the film up into 4 parts. And the idea is to point out all that he's capable of doing, all that he can do. And it's kind of ridiculous to think, unless I did my math wrong, he played the entire 2023 regular season at just 22 years old. He's a ridiculous asset for a Lions team that's already blessed at this point with foundational pieces in Sewell, St. Brown. Now they've signed Goff for 4 years, along with talents like Brian Branch, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jamison Williams, and oh, by the way, Aiden Hutchinson. It's pretty incredible the young talent they've got there. The team is obviously on the right trajectory. And I think people outside of Lions fan base have no idea that this is going to continue for 2, 3, 4 years until this group moves on or prices themselves out of Detroit. So third down plays here. He's got an incredible ability. It almost seems innate to win on third down, often against man coverage as well. In some cases, he's able to make the reception and convert for a new set of downs after the ball was tipped, maybe thrown back against the grain of the route into the radius, the arm radius of the defender, kind of like that one right there against Carlton Davis III, but more so a couple against the Saints. These are exclusively plays here where Laporta's lined up as a tight end, except for the one that I showed you again, the win against Davis on third down against the Bucs in the divisional round. So mostly he's into the boundary in 11 personnel. The 4th down touchdown against the Rams is the first play that I want to talk about. It'll cycle through back here in a moment. I think it's a tremendous example of what Ben Johnson and Detroit can do with Laporta as a hybrid player. You can go 12 personnel and elicit a defenses, base defense, their 4-3 or their 3-4 structure. You can go 11 personnel. Certainly, that's what a lot of teams do in the NFL. Spend 60 to 65% of the time in 11 personnel and survive or even thrive with him into the boundary. Or in the case of that touchdown against the Rams, go jumbo 23, 2 running backs, because Cabinda was on the field. 3 tight ends in the form of Laporta, Brockwright, who I'm glad they brought back. I don't know about you. And then Skipper as the eligible tight end on the other side. Force an outside linebacker or someone who's uncomfortable into a coverage spot that they really can't win, at least against a guy like Laporta. So they got the Rams to respond here with their goal line package. Laporta picked up an easy win over 97. I think it's Hawk, who's actually a really underrated player, but nonetheless, he's not suited at all to cover a guy like Laporta down in that space. Clearly, they had gotten the Rams into their goal line look, and he's really difficult to stop for DBs, safeties, nickel defenders, let alone an outside linebacker who's put in that position where he just can't succeed. I think in breaking routes, he's almost nuclear on. He's one of the best guys in the league on in breaking routes, somehow shielding the defender enough, but it doesn't look like a concerted effort to shield him. It's just natural. And Goff also generally puts the ball, where he can go attack it. Some would say he's only 6'3". Other tight ends in the league are 6'5", 6'6". Laporta reminds me of, I'm going to make a basketball comparison. That's usually what I rely on. Spent the majority of my athletic time playing basketball, pretty much 330, 340 days a year for 25 years. He reminds me of an NFL small forward in that he can post up smaller defenders, but he can also drive by the bigger power forwards who are occasionally asked to guard him. And oh, by the way, he can shoot efficiently as a spot-up guy or even off the dribble. Basically someone who is incredibly balanced, almost unfairly so. He's a true matchup variable in this offense. He'd be a true matchup variable in any offense, for real. But in this one, the way it turned out, him and St. Brown just tormented NFL defenses with the number of targets that they got and number of plays that they made. I think what they did together in 2023 was pretty amazing. Again, the playoff run, 21 catches, pretty insane. I think he's an all-pro caliber player, in my opinion, and I really had no idea of that 1 year ago. I wouldn't have forecast him to be an all-pro player. I'm not good at forecasting stats. It's not something I focus on, so I guess I could say that about many players. But would you have forecast this type of season for Laporta? I do know of 2 people on my YouTube, or commenters, I should say, on my YouTube channel who, after the Lions drafted him in the 2023 draft, came onto the channel when I did a review and immediately said Laporta was the best player that they drafted. I didn't know that at that time, but he certainly looks like he can be at times. The thing I think is interesting about his routes is before he's open, Goff will often have let go of the ball already. They are definitely in sync. They certainly know or read the defenses at the same time. And look, that's something that Goff does with St. Brown as well. Those 2 guys, St. Brown and Laporta, seem to be the 2 players that Goff is most comfortable with, if you ask me. The blocking stood out to me in week 1, like I said, and we'll focus on some of it here. I can't show the 1 touchdown run by Montgomery against the Chiefs. It'll get picked up for YouTube copyright use. It was an F counter. It was basically Montgomery capped that 4th quarter drive with a 6-yard touchdown run to put the Lions ahead, to break the 14-14 tie. The 9-play, 75-yard drive, really physical drive. And so that one gets a copyright notice. But in any case, from a blocking standpoint, what he was asked to do in week 1, I thought was quite multiple. And I want to make a different sports comparison for him. Maybe you don't appreciate mine, but sometimes it helps me understand a player and maybe be able to give you some insight into player and how well they perform at the various tasks they're asked to go out there and execute. He's not a home run hitter as a blocker. I don't think he's a guy who hits 25 home runs as a blocker. But if you look first, let's look at who he's dealing with oftentimes. Defensive ends or defensive tackles in the case of wham trap. I actually omitted 2 wham trap plays that I probably should have shown. For a baseball comparison, he's a guy who hits a lot of singles and doubles. and probably hits 315 or 320 because he doesn't strike out a lot. He stays on guys, he stays on defenders, keeps his feet moving, hence the not hitting home runs comparison. If you've coached offense before, you probably know what I'm talking about in terms of coaching tight ends or fullbacks. Now, maybe you didn't use that phrase. Certain kids, you use certain phrases and it clicks for them. And certain kids, you got to go deeper into your bag. Your third or fourth phrase is what works for them. Sometimes those tight ends or fullbacks getting out on second level players, whether it's an ISO block or a kick out block on a split zone concept, you tell them, don't try to hit a home run. Let's just hit a double. If everybody else in here or back there does their job, let's not have you whiff, strike out, and then force the running back into a bad decision. Let's at least create the lane. Laporta, I don't think, is special as a blocker in that regard. But where he is very unique is his athleticism on reverses, out in space. I think his athleticism plays a role on some of those concepts that Ben Johnson uses because he maintains correct leverage, meaning he'll be on the side that he's supposed to be, kind of like this play you see here. He'll be on the side he's supposed to be. The two reverses against the Saints, Jameson Williams' 19-yard touchdown run, and then that one you just saw, those are the two that stick out in my mind in terms of his athleticism, especially the one where he's dealing with Marcus Davenport. It'll cycle back through here in a moment. Davenport's a guy I intend to get a film study video out on at some point. I've just got so many projects stacked up. Finally, what makes him really unique as a blocker, at least in terms of his usage in 2023, was in 11 personnel. Yeah, he's a tight end. You're often going to see him to the boundary like you just saw there. But Ben Johnson will ask him to occasionally line up as a fullback. And that's a real pain for defenses to deal with when they go with their nickel defense, 4-2-5. 4 down linemen, 2 inside linebackers, and then 5 DBs. Again, you're seeing the reverse cycle back through here, the touchdown by Jameson Williams. He's not hitting a home run. He's certainly not muscling up Davenport. I think he's giving him enough resistance to make Davenport hold the edge, hold outside leverage, such that Jameson Williams ends up cutting it inside of that exterior frame that Davenport still has. You can see with his outside arm free. The usage as a fullback is really incredible, if you ask me, because when you look at it in combination of blocking as a regular tight end, whether it's an inline tight end or someone who creates a 3-man surface, blocking out in some space on reverses, counter or split zone concepts where he's a kick-out block. And then they also ask him in 11 personnel to line up as a fullback. And I think he generally does a pretty good job across all of those alignments. It's a unique situation. Again, I would say he gets the job done, but he's not going to overwhelm people with huge kick-out blocks or pancakes. He's just smart. Doesn't go for the home run because the Lions don't usually need one. Everyone else in there, offensive line, other tight ends, whatever, has usually done their job, such that they only need Laporta to not lose the rep. He doesn't need to dominate it to get a win. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. It's certainly not meant to minimize his impact, because if you're listening to what I'm saying, you can probably tell, I really think he's actually very high level. I think he's way better at it than maybe some people probably predicted. Is he a devastating blocker? No, but he's a damn great receiving threat. And to be able to line up in all those different places and be effective at all of those, I think is unique in and of itself. To further give people an idea, if you're listening this long, you're probably just a Lions fan, so you know already. You didn't need my convincing. But to further convince those who may be listening so far who aren't Lions fans, the guy does a nice job lining up at receiver. I'm going to use a comparison to 2 other guys drafted in the same range as him in 2023, Dalton Kincaid and Luke Musgrave. I think the Lions got this one right. And look, Kincaid and Musgrave are very talented. They're tough players. I think they had 73 and 34 catches as rookies. They combined for 3 touchdowns. Laporta had 10. This is no knock on them at all. This is really not to draw a comparison into their overall skills. It's to hopefully illustrate a very stark comparison into something that Laporta can do that they cannot. And that is line up as a wide receiver and have an impact on the game. You're seeing some big plays cycle through from a tight end position for Laporta. But what you won't see from most other tight ends is guys who can go out there and line up at receiver like he can and have an impact. Now, do I think they should switch his position? No. And I'm not into running down other NFL players that don't play for my team, whether it's a divisional foe to the Ravens or the Lions at this point. I'm not into that. That's just not me. But one thing that Kincaid and Musgrave do not offer that Laporta does is that capability of lining up at wide receiver and being effective. He's got wins against some good corners on the outside. You saw the third down win in the playoffs against Davis III. Trent McDuffie for the Chiefs. You'll see it cycle through back in a minute. Laporta bullied him on that play. Now, do I think that if he was to be a full-time receiver, he might struggle with press coverage at times? Fine. Go ahead and say that. It really doesn't matter because it's not going to happen. But the point is, Ben Johnson can move him around. He has the ability to use Laporta where he wants and dictate to the defense at times who's going to line up against him. You recall that fourth down touchdown against the Rams. That was important. That was the culmination of the third drive for Detroit. Laporta's touchdown made it 21-10. Midway through the second quarter, the Rams answered immediately thereafter with their own touchdown. Remember, it was a crazy first half, 21-17 at the half. Point is, the Lions can move Laporta around, and he can win. He can win against bigger guys who are too slow, the defensive end for the Rams, but even bigger safeties that are a little bit too slow. I'm not going to mention names. You can think of some on your own if you wish. He can win against smaller corners that can't deal with his physicality, his length, and his catch radius. The ability to play through contact is also quite noticeable when you look at the film. He's actually open earlier on a couple of these plays, the one that just showed there, and then this one against Devin Witherspoon for the Seahawks, who was as talented as they come for a rookie defensive back. He's open earlier. Goff just happens to be looking at the other side of the field. The read is down to the bottom side of the field or in the middle of the field for whatever reason. So he comes back to Laporta late, and by that time, Witherspoon has been able to recover. His unique ability to influence the game, if you go back and look at the 2023 draft, and you look at the two guys drafted within a couple of picks of each other, Laporta and Brian Branch, they're similar players to me on different sides of the ball because they can do so many things. They're versatile at their own position, tight end and nickel. Now, Branch may end up playing more safety this year. I'll offer you that. But we're just talking about how they performed in 2023, what positions they were utilized at and performed really well. But both of those guys could play other spots. And in fact, Brian Branch apparently will. How many guys, talking about Laporta one more time, how many guys have lined up at wide receiver at least 20 times in a season like he did? I mean, outside wide receiver. I think I only showed you 5 or 6 here, but there was another dozen or so that I didn't use. I can't show you every single play. How many guys have lined up here at least 20 times in a season and been somewhat effective, mostly in breaking routes, yeah. So there's not a real varied route tree there, no problem. And then those same players have also been a typical tight end who generates 80-plus catches, 10 touchdowns. Oh, and then, by the way, also line up at fullback sometimes and are asked to block like a typical fullback. I don't know the answer to the question I'm posing. It's not a gotcha moment. I don't know how to even search it. There are two incredibly smart and talented data-oriented people in the Ravens Discord. They could probably figure it out. I suspect the answer to that is 0, meaning someone who has lined up at receiver as a rookie, been effective at times. I tried to prove it to you with the small sample size I showed there. 80-plus catches, 10 touchdowns, and lines up at fullback and does a decent job blocking as a lead ISO-type blocker and is smart enough to get it done along with the physicality and the size and athleticism. I think the number's probably 0. Maybe you'll be able to think of some other players. Maybe you can think of someone who has the willingness, first of all, size, ability, speed, and explosiveness to play a little bit of wide receiver, a little bit of fullback and block, and give you 10 touchdowns in a season. It sounds like a video game, a creative player to me. But we're not done in terms of how he has impacted the Lions offense in 2023, just his rookie season. Because you're talking about a guy who generates big plays against multiple types of DBs, converts on third downs, played hurt late in the season, playoffs, I should say, in the biggest moments. I think he missed a significant amount of practice time for 2 of those weeks. My memory doesn't serve here, so you have to let me know. And then has the agility downfield to make DBs miss on the route, meaning lean or hedge one way, like you see on this long touchdown on a post against the Falcons, and then cross the face of the safety. The speed is there. What 4.55, 4.6, whatever the heck it is, it's fast enough to get the job done. He's got so much talent it's almost unfair. And like I said earlier, I kind of feel a little guilty about producing one more video on him. I do have a ton of projects I would like to produce before training camp start. His big play ability, his yards after the catch potential, his blocking and efficiency, reliability on third down, remarkable. This is the 6th video I've produced on him, so it'll be the last until the regular season or the preseason. Please consider going back and rewatching the film study video I did after weeks 1 and 2. I'll be honest, I have not. I don't necessarily even remember what I said, but I'd like some feedback on how far off base I was with my evaluation. Again, it was after weeks 1 and 2 against the Chiefs and the Seahawks. He hadn't scored a touchdown yet. He went on to be a real problem, obviously, for almost every team he dealt with, that dealt with him. The Lions have this really diverse, physical, smart run game. You combine that with St. Brown's all-world talent. You guys know what I think of St. Brown. I think he's one of the top 10 football players in the whole league. Players, not receivers. The quick delivery, recognition, pre-snap awareness that Goff offers. And then Laporta comes in 2023, and he becomes this monster for teams to consider. Was that the main factor in the team improving? Well, him and Jahmyr Gibbs being additions definitely helped, no doubt. I still can't believe that after the 2022 season, there weren't more people focusing on the Lions in terms of how good they were going to be. A true contender. You guys made it to the NFC Championship game. Very easily could have been in the Super Bowl. Detroit, I think in 2022 was 5th in points and 4th in total offensive yards. 2023, 5th in points and 3rd in total offensive yards. Points went up, though, in terms of the upper echelon of teams in the NFL, because they're being 5th in points. I think they actually scored almost 60 more points in the regular season than the year before. I see no reason why, with the same cast, save for Josh Reynolds and Jackson, Jonah Jackson, the left guard, other than those two, you're bringing back the same cast as last year, same coaching staff. I think with Laporta's ability to get into vertical space, his speed, playmaking ability, physicality, ability to get yards after the catch like you see there, as crazy as it sounds, I could see him matching or exceeding his statistical output from 2023 if he's healthy, if he plays in all 17 games or 16 games. If the Lions don't need him to play the last week of the season because their record is so good, I know it's a difficult schedule. I think Goff and him are in time, and there's this real attempt by Ben Johnson to attack to the boundary consistently. It's a focus. That's the reason why I think Laporta could theoretically match his production from last year, because attacking to the boundary is what Ben Johnson wants to do. He's very good at it with his run schemes as well as the pass. I do want to do a standalone video on the vertical wheel against the Saints from Week 14. Really brilliant design that you guys saw cycle through a couple of times. I think Laporta's a unique player. I've done a couple of sports comparisons here. I'll do one more. He reminds me of a basketball guy that you go to watch play. I mean high school, maybe college. Goes like 10 for 14 shooting or 12 for 16. They have 4 threes, but also 3 dunks. The number of players who can do that in one game, threes and dunks, is very rare. And he makes it, both of them, look easy. He reminds me, like I said, of basketball players. You go watch in high school, and you leave with your friends. Maybe you get in the car and you say, how many points you think Laporta had? And everybody's like, 25, 28, something like that. And this will reveal my age here. You look in the newspaper the next day, and you find out it was 38. And he only missed 4 or 5 shots. Because everything is so smooth for them. You just rarely get the sense that Laporta is out of his element. And what for everyone else ends up being a somewhat difficult 12-footer is in reality for him a layup. Because his overall skill level is just so high. He's a unique player, incredibly talented. I believe that the 2023 draft for Detroit ends up being franchise altering, just from the sheer number of really good to great players that were drafted, how they were able to have an impact in 2023 as rookies. Most rookies who get a lot of reps improve in year 2 health permitting, obviously. Those four guys, five, I guess. So Hendon Hooker is not going to get many reps, obviously, enough unless Jared Goff was to go down for a period of time. Those four guys, man, I think could alter the course of the franchise, along with the smart free agent acquisitions, Montgomery, now Kevin Zeitler, and other guys that were drafted in other years as well. And I appreciate you guys' time. I hope you enjoyed the film study video, the way I tried to package the plays, his impact on third downs, his ability to block across multiple alignments. Not significant from the standpoint of overall snaps as an outside wide receiver, but is effective and efficient there. And I think I showed that there's certain routes that he can win against starting level outside corners. And then finally, the big play ability, off the charts talent level. Superb pick by Brad Holmes in the second round. You have to give those guys credit. They did not get it wrong at all in the second round with him or Brian Branch, drafting two potentially all-pro players in the second round early, be that as it may. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you think other Lions fans would enjoy this film study look / commentary at Sam Laporta and how he performed as a rookie, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.